All right, so we've got a pretty fascinating deep dive ahead of us.
Yeah, definitely.
You've brought in a whole stack of articles about rock music,
Right.
and not just like the history of it, but how it like
Hmm.
shook things up back in the 1950s.
Yeah, you're really interested in how it became this like cultural earthquake.
Exactly.
And not just the music, but like the whole ripple effect.
Yeah, like how did this music become such a huge force,
Mhm.
socially, culturally, all of that?
Exactly. You want to go deeper than just the playlist.
Yeah.
You want to know like how rock changed the way young people saw themselves, how it
Yeah.
impacted like the whole social and cultural landscape.
Exactly.
It's going to be quite the deep dive.
It is a deep dive.
Yeah.
So this first article, How Rock Music Transformed Society in the 1950s.
Right.
This really like sets the scene, right?
Yeah, it does.
Like it wasn't like some boardroom of guys in suits saying, okay, let's invent rock and roll.
Right.
It's way more organic than that.
Totally. It bubbled up from the streets, you know,
Right.
like a fusion of all these different sounds.
Right.
Rhythm and blues.
Right.
Country gospel.
Oh, yeah.
Even some jazz influences in there.
Wow. So it's really like this blend of everything.
Exactly. It's like all these sounds colliding and then boom, you've got rock and roll.
And that's what makes it so exciting, I guess.
Totally. And then you're curious about its impact beyond just the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So picture America after World War II, right?
Okay.
Things were pretty buttoned up, you know, conservative traditional values. But underneath all that,
Yeah.
young people were craving something different, an outlet,
Right.
a way to break free from those constraints.
Yeah.
And guess what comes along at the perfect moment?
What?
Rock and roll
Oh, yeah.
with its energy and rebellious spirit.
Right. And it wasn't just the music itself. It was the attitude that came with it.
Oh, absolutely. And this article mentions how, like, even the term rock and roll,
Yeah.
back then it was slang for something. Pretty scandalous, you know? It had this, like, air of rebellion and naughtiness built right in.
So it's no wonder parents were like freaking out a little bit.
Oh, totally. Those anxieties about rock,
Mm-hmm.
they were really reflecting these deeper societal fears that were bubbling under the surface.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, this was a time of immense social change.
Right.
You had the civil rights movement gaining momentum. Anxieties about juvenile delinquency were on the rise.
Right.
And gender roles were starting to shift.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all that, here comes rock and roll.
Yeah.
With its energy and suggestive lyrics, it became this easy target,
Right.
a symbol of everything adults feared about the younger generation.
It's like this lightning rod
Exactly, a sonic lightning rod.
for all that anxiety.
Exactly.
But I guess all that fear just made it even more attractive to young people.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the forbidden food,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
The more you tell someone they can't have something,
Yeah.
the more they want it.
The more they want it. Exactly.
And that's where rock pioneers, genres legends comes in.
Okay.
This article talks about this intense experience of belonging that rock offered to young people.
That's interesting.
It was more than just music. It was like its own world.
Yeah, like it created its own culture.
Exactly. And it wasn't just happening in America. This was a global phenomenon.
Oh, I bet.
This article points out how Elvis Presley,
Right.
with his hip movements and rebellious attitude, he became a symbol of youthful rebellion worldwide.
It was huge.
Huge. He challenged traditional notions of masculinity
Right?
and became a global icon practically overnight.
And those dance moves were like legendary.
Oh, yeah. They drove
Yeah.
parents crazy.
Right.
But to young people, it was all about freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
And it wasn't just Elvis.
Yeah.
The Beatles are another great example.
Right. They were massive.
Massive.
Yeah.
And they showed that you couldn't just croon like Sinatra anymore.
Right.
You had to have the attitude,
The whole package.
the whole package deal.
Yeah.
They were constantly evolving too.
Right.
Think about their later music.
Yeah.
Socially conscious, experimental, pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
This wasn't just music for dancing. It was music for thinking,
For thinking.
for
Which
questioning the world around you.
you were totally spot on wanting to understand how rock became more than just music. It
Yeah.
really was like a social movement in itself.
Absolutely. And that takes us to this other piece you brought, protest in music.
Okay, yeah.
It argues that music's power to spark change isn't limited to just rock and roll.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That throughout history, across cultures, people have used music to voice dissent.
Right.
Whether it's folk songs of rebellion or classical music used to challenge oppressive regimes.
Wow. That's a whole other deep dive right there.
Right, a whole other conversation.
So it's bigger than just one genre or time period.
Way bigger.
That makes the whole civil rights connection even more fascinating.
Definitely.
This How Rock Music Transforms Society article talks about Chuck Berry and Little Richard drawing these mixed-race crowds.
Right.
Can you imagine in that era how radical that must have been?
It was groundbreaking.
Really groundbreaking.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about the audience either.
Okay.
Sam Cooke, a black artist, incredibly popular with both black and white audiences.
Yeah.
He used his platform to advocate for equality.
Wow.
His song, A Change Is Gonna Come,
I know that song.
became an anthem of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, it did.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how artists can become more than just entertainers.
Totally. They become these like cultural icons.
Right.
Leaders, voices of a generation.
Yeah, and that whole idea of using music for social change wasn't just a rock and roll thing.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. There's this protest and music article.
Right.
It really challenges that narrow view of what protest music is.
Okay, how so?
Well, we often think of it as like angry or simplistic.
Right.
But it can be so much more nuanced than that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Take Bob Dylan, for example.
Oh, yeah, good one.
His folk rock music, especially in the 60s, he was grappling with like war, civil rights, social justice, all these huge issues.
Blowing in the wind.
Exactly.
That wasn't just a song. It was like the question everyone was asking.
It was a whole mood.
And he wasn't afraid to experiment either.
No, totally.
Like later, Dylan got even more experimental, but there was always that undercurrent of like challenging the status quo.
Absolutely. That questioning spirit was always there.
And that's what makes him so interesting, I think.
Definitely. And it shows how for many artists that urge to push boundaries, musically and socially, they went hand in hand.
Totally. It all connects.
And that evolution, it didn't stop with Dylan.
Right.
Rock pioneers, genres, legends. It even brings up Public Enemy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They use rap, which is another genre with protest at its core, to shine a light on the realities of Black America.
Wow. So we've moved from like Elvis shaking his hips to Public Enemy rapping about social injustice.
Exactly. It's like this through line of using music to speak truth to power.
You know, it's kind of amazing to me how even with something as powerful as music, the message can still get lost sometimes.
It's true. Not everyone's listening in the same way.
Right. And this excerpt, you have rock music and social change.
Yeah, the one about the anthology.
Yeah, that's the one.
Right.
It makes me wonder, did rock's impact like fizzle out?
Okay.
Or did it just kind of go global?
That's a great question. And this excerpt, it suggests it's more the latter.
Like it's spread out?
Exactly. It's not about one genre dominating.
Okay.
It's about how music in general challenges power structures.
Right.
Class, gender, nationality, all of it.
A whole system.
Exactly. And I think that's why this topic resonated with you.
It totally did.
You sensed that connection to something bigger.
Yeah, like rock's influence, it didn't just disappear.
Right.
It seeped into other genres.
Precisely.
And morphed into something else.
That's the beauty of music. It's constantly evolving.
Right.
But that core idea of using it for social commentary, for starting dialogues, that's timeless. That's universal.
It's powerful.
Rock might not be the dominant force it once was.
Right.
But that energy, that drive to challenge, to provoke, it's still alive and kicking.
So if we're looking for rock's legacy today, where do we even start?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
And remember that intense experience of belonging we talked about?
With rock? Yeah.
Well, today, music fans, they connect in new ways. Online communities, playlists.
That's true. Social media is huge now.
Huge. It amplifies everything.
All right.
The song goes viral.
Yeah.
And boom, a whole new generation is exposed to new ideas, new causes.
It's like this instant connection.
So it's like this incredible feedback loop of creativity and activism.
Wow. I like that.
Artists are inspired by the world around them. They create music that reflects those realities.
Yeah.
And then the fans, they're moved to action to raise their voices to demand change.
It's like rock and roll went from shaking its hips to like inspiring whole movements.
Totally.
Makes you think, what would like future historians say about the music we're listening to right now?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Right.
And in a way, it's like we all get to answer that.
Oh, that's deep.
You started this whole deep dive with one big question.
Right. How does rock music create cultural change?
Exactly.
And I think what we've discovered is that it's bigger.
Way bigger.
Than just rock.
It always is, right?
This connection between music and social change. It's like this universal thing.
Totally. It transcends genres and eras.
So where do we go from here?
Well, that's where you come in. Right. What are you hearing out there?
in the world.
Yeah, in your playlists at concerts. What feels urgent? What feels like it's speaking to this moment in time?
Like, what's the soundtrack to right now?
Exactly what lyrics have stuck with you?
Yeah.
What songs make you see the world differently?
Or maybe even want to change it.
Precisely because that's the power of music, right?
It can move us.
It can inspire us.
It can even make us think differently.
Exactly. So keep those ears open. Keep listening. Keep questioning.
Because that's what this is all about, right?
It is. The deep dive never really ends.
It doesn't.
It just leads to more questions, more discoveries.
More deep dives.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe even a little bit of change along the way.
I like that. A little change along the way.
The best kind of change.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.